After nearly a decade, the 2017 death of a Paulding County woman is getting some new attention. Another look. The county coroner is launching a new inquiry into how Heather Turner died. It's a case previously ruled a suicide. Atlanta News First Niamani Watson is in Paulding County with reaction from the sheriff's office and Turner's family.
The Paulding County coroner is leaving the final decision on Heather Turner's cause of death to a jury. Meanwhile, the sheriff's office says its stance remains the same. And Turner's husband, well, he says he's disappointed the case is being reopened. Heather Turner was found dead from a gunshot wound to the head at her Dallas home in 2017. The Paulding County Sheriff's Office says it supports the inquest, but stands by their own ruling from earlier this year that Turner died by suicide.
So the case is closed in our eyes.
An inquest means a 5-person jury will now decide if Turner's death was a suicide, a homicide, accidental, or undetermined. Coroner Lindsay Eberhard Fuller says inquests are rare, but believes it's necessary in Turner's case.
Her death deserves to be examined through a process that is fair, impartial, transparent, and provided for by the law.
The sheriff's office says Turner's death remained undetermined for so long due to misinformation and mishandling evidence.
So the community has essentially had almost a decade to speculate. The rumor mill has been rampant. Lives have been torn apart.
We reached out to Turner's husband, Andy. He shared concerns with the inquest in a statement to Atlanta News First, saying the intense spotlight on the case would make it impossible to find an impartial jury. His statement goes on to say, in part, quote, "The continued pursuit of the matter has created additional attention, expense, and turmoil for a family that has already endured more than anyone should have to endure." A jury is expected to make a decision in January. Reporting from Paulding County, I'm Niamani Watson, Atlanta News First.